Welcome back. All right, so for today's Panic Index, I'm wearing my Cthulhu jersey. I got this from Geeky Jerseys, and I put up a video on the Entertainment Guy today where I'm wearing this as well. So, just throwing that out there, a little bit of a TEG plug. All right, so today's Panic Index is simple. You've got the happier people. This is Dwight Schrute with "Do you have tickets for the gun show or to the gun show?" Because sure. Down here you've got the various panicked faces, including Dwight's, Michael Scott's, and the Panic Index. Magnet that started it all. This was the one. This one was a sticker that got inserted with a bunch of other NHL stickers I got, and I'm like, oh, I can use that. That's a good idea. And the Panic Index was born. And over here we've got Jim Halpert, who's got this very just sort of resigned, surprised kind of look on his face. And I've written right next to that, when is the draft? Because that's for teams that have, yeah, it's already done. No reason to panic. I mean, it's just basically when's the draft. So, in a somewhat random order, let's go through this. We'll start with Vancouver. The panic is still real. The Vancouver Canucks, oh, let's put them right next to it. And I get it, you know. They did win the last game of the road trip. They won the first game. They haven't won a game in a fashion that makes me feel really good about the team yet. Even in their wins, there's some sloppy plays. There's some bad moments. And I'm going to say straight out, I know JT Miller takes a lot of the criticism, but it really comes down to the blue line. The blue line, a good blue line can bail out forwards who might be suspect defensively. I did the video on the 10-game winning streak for New Jersey. Not all 12 of those forwards are fantastic, but they've got a blue line that can cover for any mistakes that take place. The Canucks do not. And with Demko's numbers coming down to, well, I would say coming down to reality, but they're just bad. That really doesn't help either. So there's a lot of blame to go around in Vancouver, and there's definitely a lot of panic. Vegas, despite their loss last night against the San Jose Sharks, I'm going to put them right up here in the happy territory because the Vegas Golden Knights have been one of the top teams in the league, still the top team in the West, and yeah, things are going pretty well right now if you're the Vegas Golden Knights. And so yeah, I don't see any reason for them not to be happy with things. Washington. You know, for Washington, I'm kind of torn on whether or not to put them over in the one as the draft category. But I'll put them below the line. I'm not going to put them in complete panic. I think that the idea the Caps would fall back a bit this year is not a huge surprise. But the fact that they're currently 7-9-2, they've won 7 out of 18 games, that is a bit of a surprise. Especially since Kemper's been good. This isn't a fact of, their goaltending changed and that's been fine. But they've definitely been affected by injuries. They've been besieged by injuries. And they are an older team in many ways, and I think there's definitely a dearth of young players coming up to play for them, which will happen, right? Teams that are at the top of the standings don't usually get those top prospects, and so eventually that'll start to drag them down in years that follow. Winnipeg's doing pretty well. Honestly, I don't see any reason to have Winnipeg below where Vegas is. I don't know that Winnipeg was expected to be this high in the standings this early. But Jets fans, I think, have every reason to be quite happy about it. The Winnipeg Jets could very well end up winning that division. Just think about it. Although I still think it's Colorado's division. The fact that we can have the conversation a month into the season about maybe Winnipeg being first says a lot for how well Rick Bowness's systems have worked so far. One system that works as well, Connor Hellebuck. He's been fantastic. That absolutely helps. After last year, Hellebuck looked pretty human. This year, he looks superhuman again. Pittsburgh. I said this would be an odd order. For Pittsburgh, I'm going to put them with Washington. They have a very similar record. They're 6-7-3, so they're below the NHL 500 mark as well. Pittsburgh's a team that people have waited for years to see fall off the pace, and it looks like maybe this is the year. That being said, I do expect a Pittsburgh rally. I do expect them in the playoffs, but I'm still going to put them below the line because if this team does miss the playoffs, well, what then? You've got Crosby, Malkin, and Letang signed for a while. What do you do? You're not going to go into a rebuild with Crosby, are you? Are you going to risk Crosby looking at a team going into a rebuild and saying, I'd like to have another Stanley Cup ring and thinking the unthinkable, right? We've seen that in Chicago where now Kane and Taves, it's a matter of when, not if, they end up being moved out of Chicago. As insane as it sounds, with Crosby, we have seen some of the greatest players in the game end up changing teams. And so, and again, I'm not saying he's going to ask for a trade or anything, but can you really go into a full rebuild while you still have those 3 players on the roster? That's a question mark. San Jose, Honestly, I think for most San Jose fans, they're into the when is the draft category of things. I think Sharks fans knew this season was going to be a challenge. Now, they beat Vegas last night. They've been decent lately. They've started winning some games, but I still don't see them as being a playoff team. But I don't think it matters because, again, they need to get prospects. They need to get younger in some areas. Well, they're still signing guys to 8-year contracts. It's a different kind of strategy, but odds are for San Jose, they're going to be looking to get a good draft pick. I mean, if Bedard ends up in San Jose, that would help them quite a bit, right? Seattle. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put Seattle here. I'm not going to put Seattle at the absolute top of the happiness chart because there's still some moments where you can see that maybe it's not as their run has been impressive, but there's still some reason to be at least a little bit concerned about how much they're going to be able to keep this up and for how long. But for Seattle, again, quite happy, yes. I mentioned in a video a couple days ago, I'll mention it here as well. I heard some pundits saying they don't think that Seattle's for real and they'll fall off. I don't know if Seattle makes the playoffs, but I don't think that they're fraud by any stretch, and I think they're for real. It really is a matter of can you keep up what they're doing over an 82-game schedule. They're doing very well to suppress shots from other teams. They're playing really good systems, but the kind of hockey they're playing can get really tiring, and it can be tough. So we'll see if Seattle stays there. Nashville, it seems like is getting it together. I'm going to put them just below the line. It does feel like, yeah, that is backwards. It's a magnet I use here and there. It's a real genuine magnet. It's a genuine sticker from the Nashville Preds. Helmet decal and all that. There's the one that faces the other way. But yeah, Nashville, I mean, I kind of feel like maybe they should be closer to the panic side of things, but it does look like they're pulling themselves out of this slump they've been in. So I don't see any reason to have Nashville lower down on the board. New Jersey, I can't have New Jersey anywhere but here. That's impossible. 10 wins in a row. As I mentioned in the video I did on the 10-game winning streak, I don't care who they're playing. 10 games in a row is impressive. It is rare that a team wins 10 in a row, and so kudos to them for that. They're making up a lot of space between themselves and other teams. I don't expect this pace to keep up, obviously, but I don't think they're going to fall off by a lot either. It's a very impressive roster they've put together. That now that it's healthy, other than, of course, Blackwood and net, yeah, I mean, mainly there may be another injury or two out there, but basically they're healthy this year, which is a big difference maker, and they're confident. They're playing really, really well, and clearly changing out the coaching staff, minus the head coach, seems to have helped quite a bit. New York Islanders, I'm going to put the Islanders down here with Seattle, having a very good run themselves. I'm not going to put them in the absolute top row, but yeah, the Islanders are doing pretty well. They definitely look like they should be back in the playoffs, so yeah, the East is unpredictable, which I had thought it would be. There were those. I think I did this myself too. The only team I had making the playoffs that didn't was Ottawa. That's it. And I had Boston missing the playoffs. Everybody else in the playoffs. So if there was a bracket to be had for that, yeah, mine's busted. At this point in the season, it's busted, and the Islanders are one of the ones busting it. But I'm glad for them. The Islanders, they play a fun style to watch. I think it's changed under Lane Lambert. I heard the most recent Islanders game I watched, them talking about how well, the Islanders, their systems have all stayed the same, and I thought they really haven't. They seem to be playing more of an offensive style. I think they're more fun to watch. Their games are still pretty quick, not as fast as last year, and I think that Lane Lambert's done a good job with them so far. Detroit. The Detroit Red Wings, I'm going to put them right here with Nashville, just below the line, and here's why. Recent games have been less encouraging than where they were, say, 2 weeks ago, right? It definitely looks like Detroit is starting to have trouble. And the game against Anaheim last night is another example of that. They lost it in overtime. They did get a point, but that was right after the loss against LA. Now they're going to San Jose. If they lose that game against San Jose, who are, according to this board, waiting for the playoffs, it's not going to be an easy run from here for Detroit. But that, trying to predict the breakthrough, so coming back to New Jersey, trying to predict when a team's going to make that breakthrough is really tough. Once a team makes that breakthrough, and I think back to Chicago in 08-09, once a team makes that breakthrough, they're good. But it's a matter of getting over that hump. And for Detroit, it looks like it might take a little longer than Detroit fans might hope. Dallas, I think Dallas is pretty happy. I mean, last night's game with Tampa was a fun one. They did lose that one, but it was a fun game. They kept coming back. There's a lot of heart and a lot of fire. I think the fact that Ben and Sagan aren't passengers this year, they're helping to drive this and put the Dallas Stars in a position where they should make the playoffs. I think this is a more well-rounded team than the one they had last year. I think there's a better chance for Dallas to get out of the first round this year should they get in. And so, yeah, I think there's a reason to be happy. Columbus, for Columbus, I know they won last night. I don't feel like the panic part is, is there a panic with Columbus at this stage? There's a lot of injuries. A lot of injuries. And it just feels, to me, it feels like they belong here. To me, it feels like Columbus belongs in the when is the draft category because, Gaudreau seems to be enjoying himself. He said in the media he's enjoying himself. But it might be better if Columbus gets Bedard or Fantilli, right, or Michkov. One of those three players would probably look pretty good in a Columbus jersey. They definitely need something that they don't have right now, which is part of it is good health for their players. Elvis going down last night, Bean as well. Pete got shaken up. He came back into the game. It just feels like you can count on at least two Blue Jackets getting hurt every game. And so I have them in the when is the draft category. Chicago, much the same. Chicago, when is the draft? The Chicago Blackhawks are staying in the hunt, but I don't see them being top 8 in the West. And so for Chicago, the expectation is they're going to move the big names, Taves and Kane, figure out how to make that work. And so, yeah, for Chicago, the rebuild is still going on. Luke Richardson's getting more points out of them than he should. Reminds me of Andre Tourney in Arizona. But, yeah, when is the draft, I think, is the most suitable place to put Chicago. Colorado's starting to figure it out. I'm going to put them above the line. It's kind of a part of me wants to put them off on their own because they just won the Stanley Cup in June. But Colorado's getting it together. I think they're playing well. I expect that to continue. I think the Stanley Cup hangover is a thing, and I think that's part of what Colorado went through. And so, yeah, that trip over to Finland seems to have really rejuvenated them. I think it helped Columbus as well, but again, I think Columbus is at this point so far out. The point totals they need to put up are ridiculous to get into the playoffs. So in Colorado's case, fun show so far for them, and I think they're just going to keep climbing. That's my expectation. Anaheim is absolutely in when is the draft. They've won 5 games this year, none of them in regulation. And of course, that's a tiebreaker to get into the playoffs. But when you're 5-10-1, odds are you're probably not going to make the playoffs. So for Anaheim, a team that we knew was in a rebuild coming into this season, I think their record's probably a little bit below what we might have expected from them. I think they were probably expected to have a record similar to Nashville's. Nashville's 7-8-1 currently. So, yeah, I think Anaheim was expected to be closer to that than the 5-10-1 that they are right now. But, again, when is the draft? Arizona, same thing. So Arizona I'll put right here. And so that's 5 teams that I think we're already looking at from a fan perspective and saying when's the draft. And you could almost put Vancouver in here. There are definitely some Canuck fans that are of that mind of let's just try to get Bedard. But the panic is because there's some issues with the team that need to be addressed as well, and not issues that they had by design. Whereas Arizona, this is by design. I think with Chicago and Anaheim, this is by design. San Jose didn't make the improvements necessary, and I don't think they were able to come out of this. And for Columbus, they were supposed to be better, but they're not. But I think they're being in the East. I think there's probably less panic. But you guys can let me know if you feel that way or not. Boston's got to be absolutely just remarkably happy right now. It has been fun watching their games. There have been games Boston's won where I've thought, okay, they were lucky to get that one, but they're winning everything. Boston, one of the best records in the league. I know they have the best record in the league now because Vegas has lost a couple. But that being said, Boston, one of the best teams in the league. I don't know if they're the best. I know there's a discussion about who the best team is in the league and all that. I don't want to throw in on that because it would definitely look subjective / biased, which on some level it would be if I'm talking about Boston. But yeah, it's been fun to watch because Vancouver has not been. So Dallas and Boston are, helping me keep my sanity, which really reminds me of when I was a kid. And it was the Minnesota North Stars in Boston that were helping me keep my sanity when the Canucks were in dark times then. Buffalo. Remember when Buffalo was up here? Remember? Wasn't that a good time? That was a good time. Buffalo, I'm gonna put them. I'm gonna put them down here, right next to Michael Scott. Oh God, please no. I'm not gonna put them down as low as Vancouver, but Vancouver beat them last night, and things are starting to look kind of sloppy again for Buffalo, and it's a shame. I will agree with people that say, does this show how important Samuelsson is? Yeah, Samuelsson looks like he's really important to that blue line, but in general, it's a 6-game losing streak now for Buffalo. And this was a team that looked like through their first 10 games, things were better. Things were going really well. They were clicking so well. That Western Canada road trip was fantastic, but realities started to sink in. And it wasn't supposed to, not this way, not this year, but that's where we're at. Calgary. You know, Calgary right now, they seem to be pulling themselves out of it. I'm going to put them down here with Washington and Pittsburgh. I don't have them like in full panic at this point. I think getting Tanev back helps them quite a bit. Markstrom's numbers are starting to get a little better. But that losing streak was upsetting. It was a tough one for Calgary. And so we'll see if the winning can continue and they can get back into the top 3 in their division, which we didn't expect them to have to worry about. They do seem to have the one good year, one bad year thing that they do, but we'll see if that happens to them this year. I think they have the personnel to turn around. The good news is Huberdeau seems to be starting to click, so that's good news. Carolina. I'm going to put Carolina right here. So second row in the happiness. There are minor issues here. You look at that game against Colorado as an example. Colorado was the better team. And Carolina is supposed to be one of the top contenders for the Cup. And I think there's some reason to believe that that is the case, but there are also definitely some games they don't look quite as good. So for Carolina, yeah, we'll see how it all turns out in the end. I do have them quite happy, but yeah, we'll see if they trend in that direction and end up here in 2 weeks, or if they end up down here. Oilers. The Oilers were supposed to be better. The Oilers were supposed to be in a better spot than they are right now, but they're 9-7. I'm kind of wanting to put them on the line, but with the goaltending question mark that's there, I'm going to put them just slightly below the line. 9-7 is not a bad mark. It's not. They're on pace for a decent season of 92, 93 points. Does that make the playoffs? Probably not. It's probably going to take 95 plus to get into the playoffs in the West. But that being said, there's no reason to think the Oilers can't turn it around. The only reason I have them slightly below the line is because we're seeing subpar play from Campbell. We're seeing some issues with the blue line as well. And if they have to rely on Skinner, how's that going to run over a full season? Or are they going to look for goaltending help somewhere else? If goaltending ends up submarining their chances at the playoffs, Ken Holland is probably going to be looking over his shoulder at that point. Florida. I think Florida's getting better. I think Florida's play has been improving, so I'm going to put them next to Colorado. Florida's definitely lost games they should have won as well. That's definitely been a problem for them, and they seem to be turning that around too. So yeah, for Florida, I don't see any reason to have them below the line or even at the line. I think the last couple of weeks have been good for them. So are they as good as last year? No, but did we expect them to be? Also no on that one. So yeah, Florida I'm going to put above the line. LA's done well. Are they doing as well as expected? Depends on the night. I'm going to throw, you know what? I'll put them just above the line here because there's still got to be some concerns with LA overall. But that being said, I have them above the line, just not as much as others. I do think they should be a playoff team this year, but the goaltending may very well decide where they end up. And so Jonathan Quick's been good at points. Cal Peterson's definitely been fighting it. And so we'll see how things go with LA from here. Minnesota. It feels like with Minnesota they take two steps forward and then 2 steps back. That they get that big win and they get something really good happens for them, and then the next game it falls apart again. Over their last 11, they're 6-4-1. They are at NHL 500 currently. They're 7-7-2 right now, but they were expected to be better at this point. So I have them slightly below, a little bit below the line, further down than Nashville, Detroit, or Edmonton. Of course, Nashville beat them last night. And it feels like Nashville's starting to trend in the right direction, which is bad news for Minnesota since they're in the same division. So yeah, below the line for them. Montreal. The funny thing with Montreal, I think fans are happy. I'm going to put it over here, though. You know why? Because when is the draft is still a question for Montreal fans. Montreal is expected to drop out of the playoff hunt, and that game last night against New Jersey, 5-1. Well, everybody's schooling New Jersey. Everybody's getting schooled by New Jersey at this point. But Montreal, I still think when is the draft is still a big question on the lines of so Bedard, right, for Montreal. Wouldn't that be nice? And it would. This is a team that with Suzuki, with Caulfield, with Doc, there's good young forward group. You add Bedard to that, they might be a growing concern. But they're still winning enough games that they're above the line. They're not in this area right now. The New York Rangers, I'm going to put them slightly below the line. So last time out, I put them on the line. And there was one comment I saw that said I was crazy. There's nothing wrong with New York Rangers, and Rangers are winning and they're doing well. The Rangers at the time had won 3 in a row, but the Rangers are very inconsistent. And so while they do have their games like the 8-2 win over Detroit, they also have games where they just don't play well enough. And so it's such an up and down roller coaster with them right now. I'm putting them slightly below the line. If the New York Rangers didn't make the playoffs this year, that would be considered a disaster. And with the way the standings are right now, it is possible that the New York Rangers end up missing the playoffs, which would lead to, I would think, at the very least, would they fire Gerard Gallant? Would they look to make big trades? Would they just say, well, that's a one-off. We still believe in our vision. We'll keep the coach. We'll keep everything together and try it again next year. It'd be interesting to see what the New York Rangers would do because they've been climbing. This setback, if they end up missing the playoffs, would be huge. Ottawa, right down here with Vancouver. Yeah, right down next to Vancouver. So, other than Deadpool possibly buying the team, there hasn't been a lot of good news for the Ottawa Senators. And I do think there'll be some kind of an ownership group that takes over the team with Ryan Reynolds as a part of it. He may be the public face of it and all that. But yeah, for Ottawa, it has been a pretty rough season. I had expected a lot more of them. I had both Ottawa and Vancouver in the playoffs. Nope. So yeah, that's where we're at. It looks more and more like Ottawa's going to miss this year's playoffs, which would be a disaster. And it would reflect on the GM, it would reflect on the coach, it would reflect on the players. So one thing about rebuilds is getting out of that rebuild, and again, I'll come back to New Jersey, it can be easier said than done. And for Ottawa, now they're finding out. Because I've said that the whole way through of, well, you can add as many good young prospects as you want, but if you don't have the right mix, you're still not going to get that win. You're going to have a more exciting lineup. You'll score more goals, but you're going to have more goals going in your net, and the mix is off. And I think with Ottawa, I think the mix is somewhat off. And so, and I understand they've been outplaying opponents a lot, but they're still finding ways to lose. And it is up to Pierre Dorian to figure that out before it's too late. And when you look at the standings and you look at historically how things work out, it may very well be too late for them already. Philadelphia. Philadelphia is slowly but surely falling out of the position of being in the playoffs. I'm going to put them in when is the draft. I don't think Philadelphia fans are overly surprised by the fact that the Flyers are falling out. I was actually surprised by Philadelphia fans not having any sort of enthusiasm when the team was playing well and getting victories. But it's like they said, no, I'm not going to let them do it to me this time. Nope. I can line up and get ready to kick that football, but they're just going to pull it away from me. And then, if I want somebody to pull the football away from me, the Eagles can do that. So, yeah, for the Flyers, I do think they're into when is the draft territory. But don't tell Tortorella that because he will not be happy. That he is not of the mind that, just looking forward to the playoffs is, or looking forward to the draft is anything. You want to look forward to the playoffs. So, yeah, don't tell Torts. St. Louis, what week is it? So, yeah, St. Louis, things are good, things are awful, and now they look good again. They're 6-8. I'm going to put them right here because I don't think there's any reason for a full-on panic, despite their 8-game losing streak, which with 8 regulation losses in a row was a new record. But now they've won 3 in a row. So they win 3 in a row, they lose 8. Now they win 3 in a row again. No idea. So I'm going to put them just below the line. The record is not what was expected, but from one day to the next, who knows what you're getting with them. Tampa Bay, I'll put them right here with, Nope. I'm going to put them up here. I think Tampa Bay's playing well enough that I can put them up here and not ruffle any feathers. Tampa Bay is getting it together. That overtime win over Dallas last night absolutely felt like a playoff game. And so I think Tampa Bay's in good shape. They absolutely are going to make the playoffs. I would be stunned if they didn't make the playoffs. But for Tampa Bay, yeah, it's going pretty well. Now it's a matter of when does Stamkos get his 500th goal now that he's got 500 assists. And, of course, that would mean when does he get his 1,000th point? Yeah, it's coming. And yeah, the Tampa Bay Lightning are playing quite well. Kucherov playing fantastic hockey right now, which means we finished with Toronto. I had no idea this was going to finish with Toronto. I didn't. I just, grabbed them all off the board in a certain order, and I had no idea. So Toronto, this is a tough one. What day is it, right? Toronto fans, and here's the thing. The fan base in Toronto gets flack for being overly reactionary, but there's a reason. This is a team that is very up and down, right? So Toronto, they're 9-5-3 right now. They win in Pittsburgh last night. I'll put them down here with LA because I think fans want to see this over a prolonged period, meaning weeks. Weeks of good play, victories, and the like. So yeah, for Toronto, I'm going to put them just above the line. So we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 teams above the line, including Montreal here. And then we've got a bunch waiting for the playoffs, and then some unexpectedly below the line teams. So it's almost even with above the line or below the line. But you guys can let me know your thoughts. I didn't put a single team on the line today, making sure I'm committing to one or the other. So there you go. A little bit of growth this week. I do reserve the right to put them back on the line 2 weeks from now because inconsistency is a thing with me as well. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, it's always fun to do a Panic Index. Thank you guys again for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.